At the golf retreat I paid for, they gave everyone a custom visor. Mine said, most likely to ruin the mood. I didn't argue. I just smiled, took out a stack of contracts, tore them in half, and left. An hour later, they finally read what I destroyed and started calling nonstop. They all laughed like it was the funniest damn thing they'd ever seen. The whole family was gathered around the long banquet table at the Glenstone Ridge Lodge, polished wood, white tablecloths, a skyline view of the Vermont hills behind them. The kind of place you had to book a year in advance. The kind of place someone like me had to fund with a credit card and a month of overtime. My name is Jordan. I'm 38, a licensed architect based in Boston. And the only reason we were all here for the annual family golf retreat, the catered dinner, the private lessons, the 3-day stay, was because I organized it. I paid for every room, every meal, every tea time, and they still found a way to humiliate me. It happened halfway through the welcome dinner. Dad had just toasted something about family traditions, and Natalie, my younger sister, was handing out little white gift bags. Personalized visors for everyone. A tradition she started last year that I hadn't exactly approved of, but didn't fight either. One by one, everyone pulled theirs out and read the label. Fairway Queen, hers said. Adam, our middle sibling, laughed as he held his hole-in-one sometimes. Even Dad got a good one. Captain of the cart. Then mine. I didn't even have to read it out loud. The room got loud enough for me. Most likely to ruin the mood. Natalie cackled, slapping the table. Oh, come on, it's just a joke. My jaw clenched, but I kept my face neutral. That phrase. That goddamn phrase. I'd heard it 100 times over the years. I knew exactly what it meant. Adam raised his wine glass lazily. Come on, you know it fits, he said with a smirk. Lighten up, man. The table burst into laughter again. Mom chuckled into her napkin. Dad just shook his head like he'd seen it all before, which, to be fair, he had. I took the visor out, turned it over in my hands. Bright green letters stitched across a white brim. Real custom embroidery. Natalie had spent time and money on this. I smiled, or something like it, and set the visor neatly on the table beside my untouched salad. I'm gonna grab something from the room, I said casually, pushing back my chair. You're not mad, are you? Natalie called as I stood. It's just a bit of fun, Jord. Yeah, it's fine, I said over my shoulder, walking away. It wasn't fine. It hadn't been fine the last dozen times they'd done this. The jabs, the passive-aggressive jokes, the Jordan doesn't get it looks they passed when I tried to speak during family dinners. I used to laugh along to keep the peace, to be the good son, the calm brother. But this year, I had come prepared. Up in my room, I opened my suitcase and pulled out the thick navy envelope I'd packed the night before. 10 sheets of printed documents, all signed, all legally binding, all meant to help them, until tonight. I stood there for a moment, looking down at the envelope in my hands, my reflection caught in the bathroom mirror. Neatly shaved, blue button-down shirt, not a stain in sight. Still, somehow, most likely to ruin the mood. I gave a small, bitter smile. Not tonight. Tonight, I'd let their own joke speak for me. I came back just as dessert was being served. The table had shifted into its usual post-dinner looseness. Empty wine glasses, napkins crumpled, Adam already halfway through his second bourbon. Someone was trying to convince Dad to let them drive the golf cart tomorrow, probably one of Natalie's friends tagging along for family bonding. No one noticed me right away. I walked in holding the navy envelope. Didn't say a word. I went back to my chair, which was still empty. The visor, most likely to ruin the mood, was right where I left it, still grinning like it thought it was clever. I didn't sit. I just stood behind my seat and opened the envelope. The tearing sound cut through the chatter. Page 1. Rip. Adam's glass paused halfway to his mouth. Page 2. Rip. Natalie turned around, confused. Wait, what is that? I didn't answer. I kept going. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Each one folded neatly, ripped straight down the center, and dropped beside the visor like fallen leaves. Dad rose slightly from his chair, hand on the edge of the table. Jordan, he asked, cautious, almost annoyed. What's going on? I looked him in the eye. Then Natalie. Then Adam. Nobody was laughing now. The last page was heavier, thicker stock. I tore it slow, so they'd hear it. Then I placed the halves carefully on top of the rest. I looked at Natalie. Enjoy the visors, I said, calm and flat. Then turned and walked away. Nobody followed. I made it back to my room before my phone started vibrating. 1 call. Then 3. Then 7. First from Adam. Then Natalie. Then Mom. I didn't answer any of them. I sat on the bed and let the buzzing fade, watching the screen light up and go dark, over and over. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like explaining myself. Those papers weren't just some dramatic gesture. They were the plans I had spent 6 months quietly working on, trust fund documents, early mortgage payoffs, a tuition waiver agreement for Natalie's oldest, even a vacation home co-ownership contract Dad had been asking me to review. I was going to present it all tonight, after dessert, as a surprise. A thank you gift. An olive branch. I was ready to hand them real freedom, but I wasn't going to hand it to people who thought I was the punchline. They called it a joke. The visor. The years of comments. The dismissals. But I knew better. That wasn't a joke. That was who they really were. So I gave them a moment they'd remember. Not loud. Not angry. Just quiet. Deliberate. Final. Let them wonder what they'd lost. Let them sit with that. I drove through the dark Vermont roads with no music on, just the low hum of the tires and the echo of my own thoughts. My phone buzzed again, Adam, for the third time in 20 minutes, and I silenced it without looking. I didn't need to hear his voice to know the tone. Confused. Annoyed. Defensive, maybe. They didn't get it. They never had. The tears weren't for show. I didn't cry often, but I felt the heat behind my eyes now. Not from the retreat, not just that, but from all of it. Decades of it. The oldest memory I have of being blamed for something I didn't do. I was 12. Adam had cheated on a math test, blatantly copied answers from the kid next to him. When he got caught, he told Mom I dared him to do it. She believed him, grounded me for a week and said, "You should have known better than to encourage him." I didn't even have a chance to explain. Same story, different chapter, when Natalie lied about needing money for her college tuition. Told our parents the financial aid office made a mistake. Said I was helping her straighten it out. In reality, she spent the money on a spring break trip to Cancun. I covered the shortfall myself, just to keep her from getting expelled. No one thanked me. No one asked me what it cost. I remember thinking, maybe if I worked hard enough, if I made something of myself, they'd finally take me seriously. So I kept my head down. Took night classes. Interned for a firm that paid me in sandwiches and bus passes. Eventually, I landed a small residential design contract, then another. I stayed up late drawing blueprints in my studio apartment, eating leftover Chinese food and hoping my landlord wouldn't raise the rent. When I finally opened my own firm, I told Mom over the phone. Her response? "That's nice, dear. Adam says he might be getting promoted at the dealership." When I paid off my student loans 5 years early, I didn't even mention it. I knew they wouldn't care. But I always gave. Quietly. When the roof started leaking at the family cabin in New Hampshire, I hired a crew to fix it, anonymously. They all assumed it was Dad who handled it, and he never corrected them. When Adam called me one October morning, voice tight with panic about his rent being overdue and his boss, holding his last check, I wired him $2,000. I told him not to worry about paying it back. He never did. When Natalie launched her art exhibit and needed a sponsor, I created a fake donor foundation with a clean name and bankrolled the entire opening night. She thanked a fictional patron named C. Langford in her speech. I sat in the back and clapped anyway. And through all of that, the money, the help, the patience, I was still the joke. The outsider. The one they rolled their eyes at. Jordan takes things too seriously. Jordan doesn't know how to have fun. Jordan's gonna ruin the vibe. They loved to say I was lucky. Not smart. Not hardworking. Just lucky. The truth was, they liked me better when I was useful but invisible. Tonight, I gave them something else. Something they couldn't ignore. They don't know what those torn papers were. Not yet. But they will. And for once, I'm not going to explain it to them. I'm done explaining. I was halfway back to Boston the next morning when my phone buzzed again, this time from Ben, one of my oldest friends. We met in college. He's the kind of guy who knows when not to ask questions, but I could tell by his voice that something was up. "Hey," he said. "You see Natalie's post?" I hadn't. I wasn't checking anything. I'd turned off notifications, set the phone to silent, just letting it buzz and flash in the cup holder like some distant alarm I didn't owe anything to anymore. She posted a picture from last night, Ben continued, voice tight. Caption says, "Some people just can't handle love." I pulled into a gas station and opened Instagram. There it was, a cropped photo of the dinner table. Just the smiling faces. No torn papers. No empty chair. No visor. You'd think it was a Hallmark ad for family unity. And the caption, "Some people just can't handle love." The comments were already stacking up. "Families are messy, but you did your best. Sending hugs, sis." Ugh, I hate it when people try to ruin the vibe. "Glad you stayed positive." My jaw clenched as I scrolled. The version of the story she was spinning, the narrative she'd set in motion before I'd even made it out of the parking lot. According to her, I'd had a meltdown. Couldn't take a joke. Stormed off over a visor, like some fragile, humorless freak who just didn't get it. I opened the family group chat, half out of curiosity. It had already lit up. "Adam, you embarrassed everyone. We tried to include you." "Natalie, you could have just said something, Jordan. You didn't have to make it a scene." "Mom, call me when you're ready to apologize. We still love you. Still love me." Like I was the one who needed forgiving. I sat in my car and stared out at the rows of fuel pumps, watching a man fill up a minivan while two kids bounced around inside. My coffee had gone cold in the cup holder. I didn't even remember buying it. It wasn't just the post. It was the performance. The seamless way they rewrote the story overnight. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't said anything cruel. I didn't accuse or expose or retaliate. I torn up 10 pieces of paper, silently, and left. And yet somehow, I was the problem. That was the thing about people like them. They don't fight you in the open. They fight you through suggestion, implication, curated half-truths dressed in soft tones and pastel filters. They don't admit to what they've done. They reshape it until they're the victims, and you're the villain who just couldn't take the joke. The likes kept climbing. The story was theirs now. They thought they'd won. But they hadn't seen the full play. Not yet. The documents were shredded, yes. But the originals? The ones that mattered? They were already in motion. Back in Boston, I stepped into my apartment like a man crossing over into a different life. No voicemail check. No group chats. No, maybe I should explain myself. I poured a glass of water, pulled my laptop from the charger, and opened the folder labeled Family. Final. Then I did exactly what I'd been planning to do long before they gave me a reason. I emailed every scanned page of the torn documents, the real ones, not the performative copies I'd ripped at the dinner, to my legal team. Subject line, proceed. 10 PDF attachments. Labeled and dated. Retirement package, Dad. Mortgage forgiveness plan. Family cabin. Tuition trust, Natalie's kids. Art gallery sponsorship revoked. Emergency relief transfer, Adam, pending cancellation. A note at the end, terminate all transfers. Effective immediately. I hit send. Then I stared at the screen until the blue checkmark confirmed delivery. My assistant, Tasha, responded within 5 minutes. Tasha M. Got it. Want me to fast-track the Modern Builder interview? I hadn't thought about it in weeks. A business feature they'd offered me after the firm crossed its first major valuation threshold. It had felt indulgent at the time. Now? Yeah, I typed. Let's do it. The article went live 4 days later. The hidden benefactor, how a disgraced architect quietly saved his entire family. It wasn't salacious. It wasn't angry. Just fact after fact, lined up in quiet, indisputable order. They called it a rare look at private generosity in an era of performative giving. No drama. No clickbait. No bitter quotes. Just verified documents. Redacted contracts. Payment receipts. Screenshots of the trust funds I'd created under anonymous foundation names. Mortgage releases signed but never filed. Canceled property liens. Prepaid college accounts. Tax credits I never claimed. Every page told the same story. A man who gave without asking, who sacrificed quietly, who had done more than any of them realized, or maybe wanted to. It went viral in the niche way these things sometimes do. Not because I was famous, but because it hit a nerve. I wasn't the only one. Commenters shared stories of being the overlooked sibling, the scapegoat, the boring one who kept the family functioning behind the scenes. I saw lines like, I was the Jordan in my family. This broke me. Funny how silence can be louder than shouting. Even some industry accounts reposted it. A podcast for creative professionals read excerpts during an episode titled The Price of Being the Responsible One. But the quote that stuck, the one people kept circling, came from the last paragraph. Sometimes the black sheep is the only one awake. No names. No callouts. No revenge. Just truth. And that was enough. I didn't share the article with anyone in my family. I didn't need to. They saw it. I know they did. Because the call stopped. The comments went quiet. Natalie didn't post for 3 days, unheard of. Adam's profile suddenly switched to private. And Mom's only update that week was a photo of the garden, captioned, Quiet days are best. No more narratives. No more spin. The story had been reclaimed, not with screaming or scandal. Just the truth, published and permanent. Let them chew on it. Let them figure out how to rewrite that. It didn't take long for them to panic. Natalie was the first to make a move. 3 days after the article dropped, she went live on Instagram, standing in front of a blank wall with puffy eyes and an I'm just exhausted sweatshirt. The caption read, Clearing the air. I don't usually talk about private stuff, she began, brushing hair behind her ear, but some things have been taken wildly out of context. She spoke for 7 minutes straight. Said I was bitter. Said I'd misrepresented a complex family history. Claimed the money was offered, never requested. Claimed I'd exaggerated everything to look like a martyr. At one point, she wiped a tear and said, We never excluded him. He chose to isolate himself. Comments poured in. Some sympathetic. Some suspicious. Then came Adam, trying to one-up her with a video of his own. He sat in his truck, sunglasses on, the camera angled just low enough to show his good guy flannel and the dashboard Bible. I've stayed quiet out of respect, he said, but enough's enough. That article? That was a hit job. I've always tried to support my brother, even when he was difficult. Even when he was moody. I never made him feel small. That's not who I am. He added, and for the record, he didn't pay off my rent. He just loaned it to me. I was going to pay him back. He didn't even give me a chance. Except the screenshots said otherwise. The receipts, the bank transfers, the don't worry about it messages I sent. All preserved. All public. And the internet doesn't like liars. By the end of the day, their stories were unraveling. People dug up Natalie's tweets from 3 years ago. Being the favorite child is a full-time job, followed by a smirking emoji. Someone found an old podcast clip where she laughed about how my brother would literally hand over money just to avoid conflict. As for Adam, a Reddit thread surfaced an audio clip from a bachelor party 2 months earlier, him ranting in the background about my architect brother with a superiority complex who thinks buying your silence counts as love. None of it was doctored. None of it needed commentary. Just the raw material of their own hypocrisy. By the end of the week, the tide had turned. A prominent design podcast quoted the article again, this time on air. Sometimes the black sheep is the only one awake. A reminder that the people we dismiss the most are often the ones holding us together. I didn't respond. Didn't comment. Didn't post. I just let the truth keep echoing, louder than any retelling they could script. No revenge. No gloating. Just silence. The kind that fills in all the cracks when lies begin to fall apart. I found out about Natalie's separation from a friend of hers who used to follow me on LinkedIn. No call. No warning. Just a message that said, "Not sure if you've heard, Brian filed." Apparently, he'd had enough. Enough of her playing the victim online. Enough of her spinning stories about a brother she'd called a robot with a wallet just 2 months prior at a neighborhood dinner party. He didn't like how it looked when the truth came out, and he liked even less that she kept trying to make it about her. I didn't gloat. I didn't even tell anyone. Adam's fallout came fast and quieter. His mentorship gig, a cushy side role at a startup incubator in Worcester, evaporated after someone sent them the bachelor party audio. They never made a public statement. Just scrubbed his bio from the site and stopped returning his emails. The family group chat, the one they'd renamed Retreat Planning, went dark. No texts. No memes. No Happy Friday gifts. I didn't miss it. I hadn't spoken to Adam or Natalie since the retreat, and I didn't plan to. I'd shut off the automatic transfers. Canceled every silent deposit, every hidden trust I'd once managed without acknowledgement. The pipeline of quiet help they built their lives around? Gone. I didn't leave a note. I didn't answer their calls. I just stopped. No drama. No lecture. Just silence. It wasn't about revenge. I didn't want them to suffer. I just didn't want to be part of their system anymore. The one where I gave and they took. And that was the unspoken deal. That same week, I got 2 voicemails from extended relatives. One from Aunt Leah. "Your mother's very upset. Says she hasn't heard from you. Can you call?" And one from Uncle David. "Just wondering what all this is really about. Maybe we could talk." I didn't reply to them either. I wasn't angry. I was just done. The hardest part, the part one didn't say out loud, was the message from Mom that came through her sister. Apparently, she and Dad were calling it a misunderstanding. Said they didn't understand the papers I'd torn. Thought it was just some dramatic moment. Claimed they tried to reach out. That I was being unfair. But there was no apology. No accountability. Just the usual backpedal wrapped in soft words and plausible deniability. It had always been that way. I'd spent most of my life trying to prove I was worth more than a punchline. Now I didn't care if they understood or not. They could think I was overreacting. They could think I was cold. They could think whatever they wanted. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was just exiting the role I never volunteered for. And this time, I wasn't coming back. The first letter arrived 2 weeks after the article stopped trending. Cream-colored envelope. Neat handwriting I recognized immediately, Mom's. My name written out in full across the front, Jordan Everett. Inside, a carefully worded note. Not an apology. Not even close. Just vague sentiments about family bumps, a few lines about missing the old times, and a paragraph about how proud they were of my professional discipline, as if I'd won a spelling bee. I set it aside. Didn't even read the second half. A week later, another letter came, this one from both Mom and Dad. Same nice paper. Same scent of lavender, like she'd sprayed it with one of her little bathroom mists. This one was longer. More emotional. They wrote about my childhood, how I used to stack toy blocks into little towers and draw blueprints on napkins. They mentioned family dinners, my high school graduation, even the time I fixed the back porch railing without being asked. All laid out like evidence. As if memory could take the place of remorse. It ended with, "You've always been the strong one. We know that now. We love you, even if we didn't always say it the right way." No mention of the visor. No mention of the years of silent dismissal. Just a soft-focused scrapbook of moments they were trying to reframe as love. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the box I'd been avoiding. A simple cardboard one, taped shut and tucked in the back of my bedroom closet. Inside, the duplicates of the torn documents. Clean copies. Crisp edges. The originals I had scanned and preserved before the retreat. I ran my hand over them slowly. The tuition trust, the mortgage payoff, the emergency loan forgiveness forms, the cabin deed, still unsigned. They didn't sting anymore. No heat, no tightness in my chest, no temptation to hit send and finish what I started. For the first time, the papers didn't feel like proof of anything. They just felt like closure. Not because I destroyed them, but because I didn't owe them anymore. I tucked them back in the box, not with anger or regret, just finality. Then I slid it onto the top shelf, next to a stack of architectural magazines I hadn't touched in months. That night, I stood by the window in my apartment, watching the city lights blink between buildings. The kind of quiet evening where you can finally hear yourself think. I thought about who I used to be, the kid who tried to earn affection with effort, who worked hard enough to be seen, who lowered his voice at family dinners so no one would accuse him of starting something. I wasn't that kid anymore. I didn't need a tearful phone call, or a letter, or a meal where everyone pretended nothing happened. I didn't want revenge or redemption. I just wanted my peace. And standing there, alone but whole, I realized I had it. Not because they gave it to me, because I stopped needing them to. 2 years later, I was at a wedding in Portland. Not family. A friend from grad school, someone who remembered my favorite bourbon, always asked about my projects, never once called me uptight for liking things a certain way. The ceremony was held in a botanical garden. White chairs, string lights, the kind of event where everyone wore linen and laughed like they'd actually missed each other. It felt simple and sincere. I liked that. At the reception, I was sipping a ginger beer near the terrace when a woman approached me. Late 30s, dark red curls, one of those effortless smiles you can't fake. She tapped my arm gently and tilted her head. "Sorry," she said. "I just have to ask. Are you the visor guy?" I blinked. "Excuse me." She laughed. "The article. The architect. The family visor story. That was you, right?" I let out a soft breath, half laughing. "I guess I am." Her smile softened. "That story helped me more than I can explain. I left my family a year ago. Different situation, but same rules. Same guilt. That piece made me feel like I wasn't crazy. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. I'm glad it helped." "It did," she said, touching my arm again, briefly. "Really?" She walked back to her table. I stood there for a moment, feeling the breeze tug at my blazer. Someone inside raised a toast, and the crowd clapped, but the noise felt distant, like a background track in someone else's memory. I thought about everything that had led me here. The dinner, the visor, the torn papers, the silence. I hadn't spoken to Natalie or Adam since the fallout. Hadn't seen my parents. I wasn't bitter about it anymore. Just detached. Like I'd lived in a house that didn't suit me and finally moved out. No drama. No wreckage. Just gone. My life had grown in their absence. The firm had expanded. I'd finally taken that sabbatical to Spain, sketched buildings that would never be built, ate breakfast at 11, and forgot what day it was. I'd made new friends. Real ones. Quiet ones. People who didn't need me to shrink so they could shine. I was no longer the black sheep. I wasn't a sheep at all. I was just a man who walked away when it stopped feeling like home. And for the first time in my life, I saw that not as weakness, but as the first real act of strength.